Hi there. Welcome to the From Lab to Launch podcast by Qualio, where we share inspiring stories from the people on the front lines of life sciences. Tune in and leave inspired to bring your life-saving products to the world.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Grant, and I help produce the podcast here at Qualio. The reason why I'm on right now instead of Robert, and I know you're probably missing his Irish accent, but he'll join in just a moment. But today's episode deviates a little bit from what we typically do, and there's an important reason why. This is a special episode about giving back to the community and being involved. One of the reasons we launched this podcast in the first place was to share the inspiring stories of the people on the front lines of life sciences. And that phrase, front lines, is meaningful, especially in healthcare. It means those directly providing services where they are most needed, especially in remote and rural areas. Today, we're going to talk to Robert, the CEO of Qualio, and usually the host of this podcast, and Mark Ryle, the president of St. Francis Foundation. Now, not many people know this about Robert, but besides solving problems in large pharmaceutical companies early on in his career, he spent a lot of time providing healthcare to inmates at Ireland's largest prison. That's partly where his definition of success was formed, which is not just growing a successful company and helping others become successful in launching and scaling life-saving products, but at the same time doing good for the community and having a positive impact on the world. Qualio is committed to that, and not just with words, as you'll find out. We also chat with Mark, who joins us in the later half of the show. He talks about several organizations on the front lines, there's that phrase again, of community healthcare. The St. Francis Foundation in San Francisco supports the St. Francis Memorial Hospital and other outstanding healthcare organizations that Mark talks about in the local community. Known for never turning away a person in need of healthcare, St. Francis Memorial has shown brightly as an example of strength and compassion through 2 world wars, 2 major earthquakes, global pandemics, and the continued economic forces affecting healthcare delivery and costs. If you want to get serious about frontline work in healthcare, there's really no better place to look than St. Francis. Their stories are inspiring and we hope motivating to you in some way to join us and give back to our communities in any way that we can, even if it's small. All right, now let's get started by talking to Robert. Yeah, it's a little bit interesting this time because usually you're the one, hosting and asking questions, but here the table's turned a little bit and I get to ask you some questions, which is a little bit different on this podcast, but kind of fun. I guess to get started, kind of similar to how we ask other people, is I would love to just talk about your background and the experiences that led you to start Qualio.
Sure, Ryan. Thanks for asking that. So I'm Irish, as you can probably tell if you listen to my accent, which wavers slightly, unfortunately. From a small town in Ireland, always loved science, technology, and in particular, the intersection between both of those was always something I was fascinated about, and which led me down the path of really liking science in school. I ended up representing Ireland internationally in chemistry and really liked that, and kind of followed that to university, where I ended up studying pharmacy, where I practiced for 5 months before realizing it really wasn't a long-term career choice that I wanted to pursue, right? So I was fortunate at that young age of like 21 years old, I knew I needed to take a different path. Fortunately, I'd worked in some of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, like Pfizer in Cork, where they were making atorvastatin, known as Lipitor, for cholesterol, biggest drug in the world at the time. I was the human computer interface as an intern, right, between the quality teams and their systems. And that's the first time I learned that, wow, this is a mission critical function for these businesses, because in life sciences, companies make a promise of quality, which is a co-equal promise to the Hippocratic Oath. These companies are saying that when they deliver quality, it's safety, it's efficacy, it's consistency. Right. And if they don't do that, the whole system doesn't work. So it was amazing to see how important this was, but how the systems in place by the world's richest companies were barely able to keep up with that incredibly difficult to deliver on promise with the systems that they had. And that was also seen when I worked in drug development and manufacturing support in a global dermatologicals company called Leo Pharma. And it was joining those dots led to the first business I had, whereby we were working with retail pharmacy, which I always call like the last mile in healthcare. It's often the last stop before the patient, self-administers their medications or everything after the healthcare system is the last stop. And we helped them comply with new laws and regulations in Ireland. And we learned that these micro businesses had the very same problems as like Pfizer had. That makes no sense, right? Like this like 5 to 10 person business and this like 5,000 plus person business, same words, same challenges. And that's what I pulled on, like that was a thread we pulled on. Then we learned that, wow, this problem is just fundamentally not solved in the world today. The world's biggest organizations have the capital to solve it by any means possible. But once you leave the top companies, the biggest pharmaceutical and medical devices companies, the Gileads, the Boston Scientifics, the Pfizers, et cetera, there's just an enormous amount of pain, and we can solve that. So that's what led to Qualio, and we've been pulling on that thread ever since. And now the really interesting thing is that it's starting to be clear that this market is changing and evolving in a way, just like the technology world went from like a small few companies like Oracle to now this enormous spread of technology companies building huge businesses, making huge impact. In this decade, like we look at this decade as a decade where bio, which I use as an umbrella term for life sciences, goes through just a fundamental change and transformation. And I feel really fortunate and privileged that at Qualio, we're really sitting at that nexus and we get to support that transition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting you said about small organizations and large organizations all have the same problem.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you represent Ireland in chemistry internationally as a kid. So you kind of had this inkling towards science and technology. What was like your first memory with science and technology as a kid that kind of started this catalyst to where you are today?
Mm-hmm. First memory is very clear. My dad was a telecoms engineer, and he would have, parts and pieces around some of the equipment they would use for rolling out that infrastructure. And there was this one device. It was an electricity generator. It was just two magnets and a lot of rotating metal coil inside. You turn that and it generates an output, and you put your fingers on it, you turn it, and you get like an electric shock. That was like literally magic to me as a kid, and taking that apart and putting it back together. So that was one of the first times when I thought there was, in that creative act in science, it's like magic, but you can solve for that. And chemistry was something that I quickly latched onto, because people will say it's all math in the end, right? Which is, to me, is I don't have quite the IQ to look at math problems and see tangible differences in the world. But chemistry felt like that reasonable low-level building block, right? And in school, things change colors, right? You do all these amazing things, and it felt like a really tangible way to understand the building blocks. And as somebody who's very first principles in how I think, I just love that from a very young age.
Yeah. I remember my chemistry class as well growing up, and you said like kind of building blocks. And I remember my chemistry teachers, one of the only classes I remember that young, where he would bring out the molecules and show how they changed and shaped, and just seeing the physical evidence of all these tiny little particles was absolutely fascinating. Cool.
Even dropping a small piece of metal into water and it just goes on fire, right? Like your sodiums. And I don't think we put potassium into water. I think that might have been too much of a reaction. We watched videos about that, but all those things I just thought were great. And you're bringing me back right now. And funnily enough, my first chemistry teacher was also my dad's first chemistry teacher.
No way.
So he was like just starting. When my dad is exactly 30 years older than me, he was just starting in his career. My dad was in the same school as me, and he retired while I was in his class. So that's what it's like growing up in like a rural community, right? It's not like these mega schools like we have in bigger urban centers.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. That's fun. So going from that all the way to where Qualio is today, you've been kind of, I mean, with chemistry and with technology, people can use it for various purposes. And you've been very mission driven about not just being successful. I want to touch about this because you mentioned this before in company meetings, that success can seem hollow if it lacks a certain element to it, right? I think that your experiences have kind of helped you become kind of a principle-based leader and of this company, and helping people not just have cool technology or things that can, chemistry things that can do some interesting things, but actually doing something that's more purposeful and useful to the world and helping individuals. So tell us a little bit more about, or how that came about with just, not achieving success, but success with these other elements.
It's one of those things that evolve over time, to be completely transparent, because at first I was fascinated by a problem to solve. Like, this is a problem that I felt I had seen from an angle that the world hadn't appreciated yet. And that to me was really exciting. But then you start working on that, then you start to understand the impact these companies make. You start to understand the cost to the world, and these companies get blocked in areas that don't need to be blocked in. And as I learned that more over time, I started thinking a lot about, well, what if we can, yes, solve this problem, but what if solving this problem actually leads to something that's really beneficial in the world? And seeing that happen over time, it just brought me through this evolution to understanding that, wow, we're incredibly privileged and fortunate as a business that we're able to do well as a company, solve a business problem, get paid for that, and build a business. But there's a really tangible impact in that on the other side. And as somebody who would be product focused, like solving problems as my core, I think doing well is important, but it does ring hollow unless you can do well and also do something you're really proud of, because there's lots of ways to be successful, right? There's, countless ways. There are not that many ways to be successful, but also do something that makes a really positive impact on the world. And I feel that we were lucky with Qualio to land somewhere where it's really consistent to be able to deliver on both. And for me, that's why I get up and do Qualio every day, right? Because we build a business, but we get to build a business that, as far as I'm concerned, is supporting the most important industry of this coming decade, in an industry which is finally getting more time and attention again, because people are going down to the deepest trenches and going to Mars and all these really cool exploration activities. But we look in the mirror, like, we don't really know how the body works right now. Lots of the therapeutics on the market today work because we know they work, not because you know how and why they work. So I think we're at the start of an incredibly intellectually interesting journey, and one, thankfully, which has that back end really powerful effect. And that's, it makes me really excited. And like, I could burn all the time we have on this chat today talking about that if we had it.
Yeah. Well, Quality is a mission-driven company. I think that's one thing that attracts a lot of people to it. Is the ability to enable teams to save lives, bring life-saving products to the market. But and you didn't just stop there. Like, there's one thing to build a business and to grow it and to feel like you're helping these companies be successful and in turn be successful and make an impact on the world. But then you decided to take it one step further with the company, which is this giving back, 1% of revenue. So how did that come about?
Yeah. So we've looked at our mission as enabling teams to launch and scale life-saving products, which on its own we believe is incredibly impactful and is a worthy mission to rally, our life energy around as we're all working together in this company. And why is that important? And this was, again, the thread we pull as teams and in discussions is, well, there's an assumption behind that we believe everybody deserves to live a long, happy, healthy life, right? I don't think many people will disagree with that. And that's, again, gave us a deeper understanding of, okay, yes, that's our core belief. That's what drives this. Now, how well are we supporting that belief? Are we living in a way that supports that? And we thought about it and we realized, well, we're all very privileged, right? To have jobs, and have healthcare and all these things, but we're in an incredibly unequal world. And not everybody has access. All these companies we support that launch these products that save, extend our lives and the quality of our lives, not everybody can access that. And that to me was, again, talking about ringing hollow. I felt that, can we really be proud of this, knowing that we're in a way contributing to helping people who are already very well supported, and there's all these people that need our support. And I'll give you one example. We didn't cover it earlier, but I was a pharmacist for a period, and when we started Qualio at the beginning, I was working essentially in Ireland's largest methadone treatment clinic, which was within the largest prison in the country. And I was dealing with there were heroin addicts that were in prison, mostly due to behaviors as a result of their drug addictions. And I got to know a lot of these people. These are really unfortunate people, nice, good people in most ways, but society hadn't been there for them, and they needed help, but they were never going to get access to the latest machine learning driven computational biology product that we're going to launch, right, as a result of being on Qualio. And I realized that through consultation with some of our team that we can actually do something there. So looking at how companies build philanthropic giving, we thought it would be really powerful to launch this, like 1% for all life is what we're calling it. The goal here is that we take 1% of our revenues each year. So for every dollar our customer provides us, we provide 1 cent directly to causes that support improving access to healthcare for vulnerable populations. And in doing this, right, I feel it kind of closes that circle. It allows us to help solve the problem from the pure innovation end, which is really important, but also try and give more access to that at the other side as well. And I think it's the most powerful way we could reinforce our mission, our core beliefs, and demonstrate our values both internally and externally. And after a year of the 2020 has been, I know I feel just beyond privileged to be able to give something to those that need this help. And just makes me really excited. And I'll also pause on the 1% of revenues piece, because when you read about companies and they're giving, you hear 1% of profits or a portion of proceeds will go to X, Y, and Z. And I often find those somewhat disingenuous, because like that's basically means people can decide whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, really the biggest commitment is trying to make it a really clear and auditable. This is a commitment we're making. And I believe that this will not only mean something for us internally, but our customers and our partners as well. This is part of something positive. And I think we all have both an ability and responsibility when we can to try and help and give back, right? So this feels like a way we can do this as a business.
Yeah, I love that. Doing well and also doing good at the same time. You can
Yeah.
do both. Yeah. So
Yeah.
tell us about the organizations that Qualio is going to be supporting this year, and why did you choose those?
So we've started off, there are 3 paths this year that we're taking, 2 organizations, and also again, with one of our values of being like team players, we're leaving everybody choose a cause of their, that they believe in, that's in line with this value, to give a portion of the proceeds. But the 2 causes we're supporting, one is local to me here in San Francisco, and one is international. The local one is the St. Francis Foundation, which is here in San Francisco, one of the world's wealthiest cities, but also in terms of inequality, also one of the world's most unequal developed nation cities. And what they do is the foundation's partnered with the St. Francis Memorial Hospital, which is the only hospital in the city here that never turns a patient away. So when we were looking for ways we can do something really on the ground here, where a considerable number of our teammates are, I felt like there's no better way to set an example for what it means than to literally help fund a cause that helps those who literally get turned away from healthcare to not get turned away from healthcare. So that's a really tangible, really, really great way for us to live that. And we started this year, and we hope to partner with them longer term. The other cause is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I think there are few organizations that have made a positive impact on the world this organization has, by taking some of the same drive and determination and measures that Bill Gates took building Microsoft, to actually making measurable, meaningful impact on the world. And it is the quickest way we've identified to be able to start making global impact. Although the donations are small right now, they're getting a lot bigger every year. And I think they're a really great potential long-term partner for us as well. So they're the 2 ways we're looking at that right now. And we'll be evaluating and growing this every year. And this is just the beginning for us.
I think the example you're setting as well for other companies, any entrepreneur who's listening today, there's no better time to start. If you start these habits and practices, even when, like you're saying, small, as you continue to grow, you've already built in that habit and that, that tradition.
And it's already happening. And maybe that we have a particularly empathetic bunch of people at Qualio. I'm not going to, I don't know that. I wouldn't say that, but just speaking to people on the team, there's a real belief in giving back across the team. So many people do things in their private lives, right, to give back either time or money. I think that there's a responsibility in the world today, when again this inequality is growing and corporate wealth is soaring relative to everything else. I think there's a responsibility to do that, and it doesn't have to be big. Like it can be really small, but I think starting that habit sets an example. So thanks for bringing that up, Grant.
Yeah. Was there anything else, Robert, that you wanted to share in this portion of it? We're excited to have Mark from St. Francis Foundation here in just a minute, but anything else you wanted to say?
I don't have anything else to say except that the biggest thing behind this is like people like you, Grant, and everybody at the team of Qualio. We started off, it was just me, right? And we couldn't really have done much about this. So knowing in 2020, which was a year full of challenges and loss and pain for so many people, knowing that despite that, we've as a business been able to have such success that we're able to lean into this in a way that's actually meaningful for the causes. It's of all things that we've done this year, this is the one thing I look back on for 2020 and be eternally grateful. So to everybody who listens from Qualio, and I know I shared this in our most recent all hands, I feel this is like one of the most highest impact things we could possibly do, and a really worthy way to spend our time and reflect back on, the great work you and everybody else does. So thank you and everybody at Qualio. and all our customers who, again, are the people that make this possible by trusting us as the custodians of their quality operations.
Well, thank you, Robert, for starting this. It's something we all definitely support and are looking forward to how much it's going to be in the future. We could look back on this podcast 5 years from now. This will be out there, 5 years from now, we'll look back and think, wow, that's how it started. And it was so small. So it'll be kind of fun in a couple of years' time to see where we're at.
It's great exercise. Grant, thank you so much for interviewing me. I learned some things, and thanks for listening.
All right. And let's bring in Mark here in just a second. Okay, we're recording.
It was just like that. Mark, so we had no technical snafus today. You just got right in. All right.
Sounds great.
There we go.
I was just telling Grant a bit of background about how we got in touch and all that. I think it'd be super awesome to kind of cover it. I really appreciate you taking the time to bring us all together. Saturday night and for allowing us to start supporting you just so quickly. Huge fans of what you're doing, and the more that we dig in, the more that we're happy to be able to support you and everybody at SFF.
Well, I'm very grateful for it. I really am. It was I'm sorry, my dog has decided to join me.
Oh, what's their name? We're all about our most active Slack channel at Qualio is like our pets channel. So when they appear, you just have to introduce them. That's the rule.
Okay, this is Wilma, and she'll come and go. She has her mind of her own.
Yeah. Hey, Wilma. Welcome to the show.
So
Grant was.
I was going to ask. I mean, how did you two connect?
I might share some of the background from my side, Mark. I'm curious
Sure.
what yours is, but I have known one of the board members at St. Francis Foundation for quite some time now. Arjun Devarora, who's been somebody who I would trust quite a lot, and he would have been talking to me for a long time about some of the work he did at St. Francis Foundation. So when I brought to him that, hey, we're launching this 1% for all life pledge. Who are the places where we could really make a positive impact? And I described to Arjun the mission statement for what we're trying to do. And he was like, Rob, do I have the person for you to connect with? And I just couldn't believe it when he said that. I'm not sure, Mark, what your version of events is.
Yeah, I mostly do whatever Arjun tells me to do. So I'm not a stupid guy, but Arjun has been trying to make meaningful connections for us, and not to sound too cliche about it, but I feel like that we could go this alone, but that isn't what this is about. This is about trying to leverage minds and hearts and dollars and do something stronger together. So that's what I'm eager for.
It's really nicely stated. I spoke internally to the company about the work you do, and I'm just going to say people were just really impressed with what you're leading, particularly about it. And I'd love maybe just to share in your words, how do you describe what you folks do and at St. Francis Foundation and its impact?
Sure, Rob. So St. Francis Foundation is considered a medium-sized healthcare foundation in the Bay Area. That's a tall order because there's a lot of people doing a lot of good work here. When I got there 18 months ago, they brought me from Project Open Hand, which is a grassroots, beautiful little place that every day struggles to pay the light bill. And St. Francis Foundation's history is very different than that. It is a strongly endowed foundation that didn't quite know how to make an impact, and nor did it know truly what its purpose or funding priorities could be. So my mandate in that hiring process was to change that, was to try to make a difference that way. So today we are looking to be, and forgive me, but I approach this from a private equity standpoint. It's what I did for so long. But we are looking to be thoughtful partners, both on the financial side and in the organizational side, to make a difference in our healthcare community. And that has to look like everything outside of the hospital. When our foundation formed 40 years ago, healthcare happened in hospitals. Doctors were in hospitals. This is where you went to have everything taken care of. And that isn't and can't be the case anymore. And we consider ourselves a catalyst in every way we can, whether it's embarrassing people or funding people or manipulating people, whatever it takes. We're going to push healthcare into the community where it belongs.
I love that. And I want to ask about your background in a moment, but when you say push it into the community where it belongs, what does that mean today?
Yeah, anyone should only be in the hospital for surgery that requires you to stay overnight, or for an emergency. Anything else should be done inside of your community, whether that's in an ambulatory care facility, in a community clinic, or in a shelter. So we believe that folks know best about an individual's health who know the individual and who live in their lives and work or live alongside them. So our goal in this new approach is to find small partners, not big partners, small partners who are on the ground doing the work, who have some measures of success. You know, we are not startup people. We are investing in something that has some traction in their community, and that is showing stabilizing factors for individuals around their own ability to attend to their own health, their ability to engage in healthier practices in their lives wherever they are, because that's a broad spectrum, and to do it in a stabilized environment, whether they're housed or unhoused. We don't know how to do that. The hospital doesn't know how to do that. There are experts on the ground doing that. So we are the intellectual and financial capital behind them. There's an easy example in that right now. In our Gender Institute program that we started 3 years ago, we started by recruiting really important surgeons, because you got to have that. But we learned, when I got there, I suppose, we learned that the rest of it we don't know how to do. So we engaged with the San Francisco Community Health Center and St. James Infirmary, two small organizations on Polk Street who've been working in the trans sex work community for a long time. And that's where your biggest vulnerability is in trans sex workers, people who are otherwise disenfranchised, who are being manipulated by individuals who don't have their interests at heart, and who may or may not have access because of their color, their mental health, or their substance status. So those two small organizations are already connected. We can fund their work, help them get a little bit better at what they do, because we bring medical care into that field. But we know that they know what they're doing. And that has now been, we've made 3 investments into San Francisco Community Health Center and St. James right now. And we're seeing incredible improvements in their patients' and clients' health, because they know them. We don't know them. We sit up on the top of a 12th floor on a top of Nob Hill. We have no idea, but they do. And that's an example of how we leverage our dollars and our smarts into the community with somebody who already knows what they're doing.
One of the first things you said to me, I think this was in association with the work you do at the St. Francis Memorial Hospital, is being the only place that doesn't turn people away, which sounds like that carries a pretty heavy cost burden. I'm curious to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, Rob, you're going to just shut me off at some point and pretend the Zoom thing broke on this one.
Noted.
Nonprofit hospitals aren't supposed to make money, right? That's the idea. Whatever you make, you put back. That's not a problem for St. Francis Memorial. Making money's never been a problem in the bad way. So we have, as a hospital, and I'll use we now broadly, since 1906 been investing in the community. And last year, that looked like $67 million of unpaid healthcare that we provided into the Tenderloin.
Wow.
And that's something that we're proud to do, that we're happy to do, but it's hard to do it. And that is because when you walk in or you're carried into our emergency department, we do not divert you. Diversion is a process that hospitals use to reallocate care. And I'm kind of a no bullshit kind of guy here. So that means if you don't fit the commercial insurance requirements, or you aren't someone that they can at least break even on, they're going to push you to another hospital. My incredible colleagues at San Francisco General divert 70% of their emergency department traffic. And where does that go?
Wow.
Across Market Street to St. Francis. And I don't have a terrible problem with that idea, as long as we can handle the work. But when you're the hospital that turns no one away, you get full quickly. And that taxes your nurses, and that taxes your ER docs, and that taxes your pathologists, and your infectious disease folks, and your trauma folks. And so the purpose of the foundation in that regard, Rob, is to support those professionals doing the work on the ground so that we can continue to turn no one away.
Inspiring to hear that, Mark. I appreciate that work an awful lot. You mentioned as well recently when we spoke about, you said the hospital is no problem making money. COVID, how does this year impact the dynamics of trying to be the place that turns no one away?
On March 17th, which is an important day for a lot of people, on March 17th, the hospital made the decision to, before anyone asked, to step up and convert our 6th floor into a sealed COVID ward. That did not come with money at first. It actually still hasn't come with money. Came with some promises, but no money. And the city needed somebody to do it. And the room was quiet for an uncomfortable period of time, and with all of our colleagues from all of the other hospitals in that room physically at the time, because we didn't know we couldn't do that yet. But UCSF was there, CPMC was there, Sutter Health, St. Francis, St. Mary's, which is our sister hospital on the west side, San Francisco General, and the Benioff folks. And our hands went straight up and said, we'll do it. I get a little bit mushy sometimes when I think about that pride. We, in the next 2 weeks, sealed off the 6th floor and created a ventilation system that would protect the rest of our patients, and opened the city's first COVID ward. We have 48 beds that can, from ICU to critical care to standard care, that are dedicated to COVID patients. And when you do that, a couple of other things happen. One thing we didn't really think about, but you have to shut off all of your revenue-making business, because you can't take the chance of others being infected. Even though we're sealed, you have to divert all of your resources to the intensity of COVID, which means all of our critical care nurses were focusing on that. All of our surgical nurses had been redirected to focus on that. Our docs were then volunteering. Our plastic surgeons, who had never been in that experience, were raising their hands and volunteering for that work, which meant that we couldn't do the work that makes us money. And that then the city officially shut down all elective procedures. So that just cemented the deal. And perhaps an unintended and lingering consequence of that decision, that boldness, that pride, is that when folks know that you're the COVID hospital, they get a little itchy about coming. Mm-hmm. So when we reopened for elective procedures, we had to do a lot of education that showed people that we are still every bit the safe place to go, still every bit the best surgeons in town in some really important areas. And we're still going to serve COVID patients. So get comfortable with that and come on back.
As a San Francisco city resident, I applaud and appreciate that work you've done, Mark. I really do, and I think we could probably break Zoom. I think if we keep going down that path. But something that I think is definitely important here is, and the context being, like you've mentioned private equity, right? Like this isn't something that maybe as growing up you wanted to do this, but you didn't do this at first. I'd love to understand the journey to doing what you're doing today, because I know lots of people, me included, like how do people get involved and help, and what's your journey?
Yeah. Again, you have to just pretend the internet broke, because I'll keep talking on this one. I grew up in a tiny town in West Texas, and I'm the youngest of 5 kids. We're a good Irish family that way. They didn't know anything else to do but just to keep having them, I guess. And I think we were their labor force, frankly. It was about trying to get the work done in the house. Both sets of grandparents were sharecroppers. It's how we grew up. And my job was to sit closest to the phone at the dinner table, so that when the collections people called, I could answer and pretend that nobody else was there. So that is everything inside me, Rob, about who I am. Yeah. The youngest of 5, I'm the black sheep. I'm the one that didn't go into public service or to social work or as a teacher. All my siblings are cops or teachers or social workers, because that's how we were raised. And I was tired of being poor, very honestly. It was not a lot of fun, and I was tired of seeing my folks struggle. So I went to business school, and I went to work for the darkest of dark horses, Lehman Brothers. And I did that for nearly 24 years in some variation of a Lehman Brothers partnership. That looked like the wildest ride of my young life. At 26, I was doing what no 26-year-old should be doing, making sure that companies were put together or broken apart, and that profits were made. And in the quiet moments in hotel rooms or private jets flying around the world doing deals, I could convince myself that I was ultimately helping the economy or the community's economy. And in the brightest light, I knew that that wasn't a clear enough conscience for me. So in 2004, after my last deal, I didn't know it would be my last deal at the time, I looked at my husband, who'd been my husband for 20 years at that time, and I asked if he'd be all right if I actually pursued what my heart told me to do, and try to make my parents proud in a different way. And because they were sure proud of the work, they were proud of the private jets, they were proud of that money, they were proud of, oh my gosh, our youngest is doing okay. But I wanted them to be proud of the way that was in their hearts. So I decided to go back to University of Chicago, to the other side of campus, to the social work school, and get a degree in a master's in social work to help kids. And my first job out of social work school was as a youth counselor at a foster youth program here in the city, Huckleberry Youth Programs, a shelter for kids who aren't safe at home. I did that for almost 7 years, and it broke my heart every day. But it was a heart that was reawakened by the work, and I couldn't have been happier. I have found my way back into the top floor, to the executive suite, no longer on the ground anymore. Partly because I can leverage my experience in corporate finance and in that M&A world, and merge it with my social work experience to develop a better third way. And that's my hope in bringing that experience to this work.
Very, very well told journey, Mark, and it all makes sense when you explain it. So thank you for that. Something that's, you clearly will have some thoughts on this, but I'm always fascinated about some of the lessons you learned in like the commercial world, right? And the capitalist society that that exists are often good lessons and strategies and tactics, and they can be applied for good as well as for evil or anything in between. For people who might be listening who are involved in it, calls in, my hometown of Mitchelstown, County Cork in Ireland, or some small place in West Texas or anywhere like that, and they're trying to get better and make bigger impact. Any simple like lessons learned that from that enormously valuable experience that you have you could share?
Yes, one in particular. Just make sure that what you do at the end of the day allows you to look at yourself in the mirror and be proud. You won't always have those days, but if you roll up your sleeves and do what your heart tells you to do, and you go boldly through it, you ask for forgiveness more than permission, your heart will lead you to the right place. That's what I believe. And I've made plenty of mistakes, but I don't spend a lot of time asking for permission. I follow my instinct, I follow my spirit, and I listen to my grandmother's voice in my head.
I appreciate that. And any other advice for people, who are interested in either maybe getting involved, with the foundation, or just trying to get involved in general? It sounds like you took like you looked at yourself, you went back to what gives you meaning, and you leaned in. How would you remind people or help people make that transition, or even in a small way get involved?
Yeah, there are. Listen, large healthcare foundations don't need a lot of other help. Frankly, that's not who and my colleagues at some of these large healthcare foundations who I've known for a long time, or the nonprofits, are not going to like this part of this, but. Where the important work happens is in small organizations on the ground. So there is a last week, or the days get a little mushy these days, but probably this week, you may have read that there was a large fentanyl bust in the Tenderloin, 10 pounds of fentanyl, which is a lot of fentanyl. The police department was very proud of that work. And I come from a law and order family. I get that. But the result of pulling all that fentanyl off the streets is all those people who are addicted to it are now going crazy. And there aren't resources to address the come down or the withdrawal for that. So what we have seen in the 3 days since that fentanyl bust, and I'm going to get to your answer, I promise, Rob. What we have seen in the 3 days since that fentanyl bust is an incredible increase in our emergency department of folks who have sought excessive other uses or forms to satisfy that addiction. So what could have happened in my reality, my fantasy, is that we could have worked in partnership with the police department and the city to identify community organizations that we know that provide medically assisted treatment or that provide alternative approaches to fentanyl addiction. And before that bust happened, we could have lined those folks up and put them on the ready financially and with other resources to address the crisis. Now we're on the back end of it. We are putting Band-Aids over wounds that didn't have to happen. And that is not how community health should go about. So so to answer your question, St. James Infirmary, I talked about them earlier, tiny little agency doing whoever you pray to's work in the community, helping Black trans sex workers try to stabilize. They need volunteers. It's scary work some days, but it's powerful work. Open Hand, a food organization, needs folks to come in and package meals and deliver meals to people who are in their homes because it's not safe to leave right now. Scary work, but really important work. Muttville, this sweet little nonprofit that provides adoptions to dogs that are three-legged or one-eyed. Hard groups need the help on the ground doing the work because everyone's freaking adopting a dog right now. So go small. Go where your heart leads you. Help with money, but help more with labor. They need the help rolling up your sleeves and doing the work on the ground. We'll take care of the money behind it in partnership with them, but they need your help in a meaningful way.
Thank you, Mark. And after this, if there's any links or references you want us to add to the show notes to put along with this, let me know, and we'll make sure they get shared. I just want to kind of close, but on my side, I just want to say that I feel incredibly privileged and fortunate that, at Qualio, in one small way, we get to support some of your work. But I think the real thank you here is for people like you who are dedicating your careers and so much of your energy to making positive impact. So I feel just inspired from chatting with you today, as I knew I would before I did. And I'm just really excited to kind of follow the journey and help out in any way I can and any way we can. So thank you very much, Mark. Is there anything else you want to share before we finish up today?
No, I'm grateful, Rob. The first time we talked, I believe that there is a thought partner in you, and I'm very much looking forward to that relationship as we explore what we do better together. I think that if we can, that the idea of a public-private partnership to address community issues leverages an intellect and money and manpower, and I think that's how we get to a solution someday. And I'm grateful for your time. I'm grateful for your support. And I know I will be grateful for your friendship.
Thank you, Mark. Stay safe and look forward to keeping in touch. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of From Lab to Launch, brought to you by Qualio. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and give the show a positive review. It really helps us out. For more information about Qualio, our guest today, or to be a guest on a future episode, please refer to the show notes. Until next time.